Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Jonny Sun, a playwright, humorist, and low-key Twitter god whose first book, Everyone's a Aliabin When You're an Aliabin Too, comes out June 27th from HarperCollins. I've seen a few pages of it, and you should buy it. Jonny picked Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End, collectively known as the Cornetto Trilogy. Directed by Edgar Wright, written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, starring Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, all of whom first worked together on the delightful Channel 4 series Spaced, these films span nearly a decade of creative collaboration and perfect pop fizz, dancing through genres and themes with a confidence and intelligence that immediately sets them apart from other comedies. They're also not exclusively comedies. They're practically perfect expressions of the types of stories they choose to tell, commenting on familiar tropes while simultaneously investing them with new resonance and meaning. They are not spoofs. They are never spoofs. They're tributes. And if you think that an hour isn't nearly enough time to get into these movies, well, you're right. But we do what we can, and Jonny finds some really interesting angles on the trilogy as a single work of art that, make the whole thing worthwhile. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I think I was in... What year did Shaun of the Dead come out? Like 2004? I mean, yeah. I was 14 at that point. And so, that was when that was, just the point in my life when I started getting into, movies, really, really into movies. And Shaun of the Dead was, probably, instrumental to my entire, life at that point. And it became just, I think I, internalized so many aspects of it. And it keeps surprising me because every time, I do something... I realize there are elements of Edgar Wright and Shaun of the Dead and everything that keeps popping up.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it was oh my god. I mean it really made me fall in love with genre films, I guess. And it I really got into zombies because of this movie.
Okay.
Which is obviously the most surface topic when we talk about Shaun of the Dead, but it got me into zombies, and it got me into this idea that you can do kind of a comedy based in genre, but without it being spoof, right?
Right. Well, that was the first thing I thought of when you said that the zombies were it's a perfectly functional zombie movie and a perfectly functional romantic comedy. I mean, that's the thing that everybody misses. That Edgar Wright doesn't make spoofs. He salutes things. He sort of finds the reasons that they work. It's like the best cover songs.
Yeah.
Because you're reminded of all the things about this format that you already love, and then you get to experience it from the inside out in a whole new way. And yeah, when did you see it theatrically? Did you watch it on disc?
I think I watched it. I don't think I watched it in theaters. Okay. I think I remember we rented it from Blockbuster.
Aww.
And when VHS still existed. And
people are going to miss that stuff.
I know. And so yeah, I watched it on TV, and it really is it's an homage, right? It's and just the way they kind of they clearly were in love with the genre and the structure, because they knew every single point, they knew everything to touch on when we're talking about zombies, and they constructed it lovingly. And it was, the first time I watched it, I didn't really know what to expect.
Okay. Had you seen the Romero films? Were you familiar with...
I can't remember what the order was, but I think this might have been... I think I'd seen the Romero films. Definitely Dawn of the Dead.
Okay.
And I think... When did the new...
Remake?
Yeah, when did the remake
come 2003. It was right
so,
before.
Okay. So I think I had seen the remake, and then I'd seen the original, and then I saw this one, and... I didn't know what to expect for this. I thought it would kind of be a spoofy kind of movie, because the Scary Movie franchise was around that time as well. Yeah. And so, but I picked this up, and I fell in love with it immediately, because it was a zombie movie. It served and functioned as I think one of like the best zombie movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember seeing it. I saw it at a 10 a.m. press screening.
Oh, amazing.
With a couple of friends who were big fans of Spaced, Peg and Matt's show.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen it. I was completely new to their thing.
Yeah.
And as soon as they found out there was a press screening, like, oh, can we come?
Yeah.
And they're both English, so I asked, can they be my interpreters? Can I bring these people along and see how they respond to it? And within 5 minutes, it didn't matter. I was under the spell. I was into it.
Yeah.
But the thing that really surprised me is that it's legitimately disturbing. That opening sequence is both very funny and charming, and also really creepy.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, it's telling you it's going to function in both worlds, and then it's this incredible tightrope walk and a thrilling. You're watching this incredible piece of athleticism as they navigate the two.
Yeah.
And then when it was over, I was just so happy that it hadn't gone wrong.
Right.
Because so many of these movies start so well, and then just every zombie movie seems to end the same way, where people are the real problem, and there's, people turn on. The Romero films are always about how humanity turns on each other, to the point where now you just start picking, who's going to turn when, and it's pretty easy to tell. Yeah. And with Shaun of the Dead, you also have this. You don't have humans as the problem, really. I mean, Shaun is the problem.
Right, yeah.
And
it's self. It's like self versus self.
Yeah. And every choice he makes is actually bad for someone else.
Right.
But you also get this incredible narrative arc about someone who is finally growing. I mean, it's an Arrested Development metaphor, but you get the story of someone who grows up by losing everyone around him and fighting for what's important. And it's just... subsequent viewings, not the first time. The first time I was too giddy.
Yeah.
But every subsequent viewing, I cry. I mean, it just reduces me to tears because it's this really moving arc. Yeah. I hate saying arc. It sounds so cliche.
But
his journey is.
You're right.
But it's so powerful, and even just that last little tip of player 2 has entered the game is just suddenly it all snaps together, and that's the thing that Edgar and Simon Pegg can do that I don't think anyone else is doing right now, where they just layer meticulously every single thing that you need and then bring it back around for this this triumphant finale. They make a crescendo where there shouldn't be one. It's so good.
It's like such a perfect, the way they like set everything up and foreshadow everything and like reference each of the 3 films in the trilogy do the thing where like the like first act, I guess, kind of sets up. It's like a, what's it called in a symphony when you, it's like your theme, right? It's
the overture.
Yeah, it's like an overture, right? It sets it up and then it like repeats subsequently. And with with Shaun of the Dead, it's when you have that scene where he's walking to the store, right, and then it repeats. But there are so many of those moments, and I see like Shaun as like a two-parter almost, right? Like before the zombie stuff, and then like after the zombie stuff happens. Sure. Yeah. And so you have all these like delightful mirrors and like setups and payoffs, and just I can watch that movie like over and over again because you'll find something new every time.
Yeah. Have you seen the little 15-minute the whiteboard sequence on the DVD?
No,
it's magnificent.
So. Yeah.
Before they started principal photography, Edgar and Simon, and I'm just going to call them by their first names because that sounds weird, but I love them.
Right. It's like we know them.
You've met them, right? I've interviewed them and Nick Frost a couple of times, and it is every time it's like picking up a conversation that I've been having with them through their work for years. And once I pitched, I was fully prepared to do it. Still am if there's anyone listening. I pitched Edgar on a book about Shaun. Oh, wow. It's a little ECW pop classics thing. And he said, sure.
Oh, cool.
And so that's it.
Yeah.
I know him. But the idea that this thing that they did, and it's on the DVD and the Blu-ray, they sat in front of a camera and showed the camera, and by extension all of us, this big paper.
Oh, I did see that. Yes,
where they lay out every theme and every movement. No one else is doing that, and they should be. Everyone should.
Right. Yeah. And I was going to bring up how like whatever the DVD I had also had there were so many like special features loaded into that thing that showed how the thing was made, and like by watching those special features I kind of learned about like filmmaking. Like that was like And I was just thinking about how I don't watch special features anymore because I just stream movies now. And I like really miss that kind of like the commentary and like the special features and all the making of things.
Apparently there are nowadays in the present, iTunes is carrying things as extras, but they're not backfilling. So all the stuff that was released on disc is still on disc, and that's apparently staying on disc. It's just not migrating into the new formats, which is why we're sitting in a temple of physical media.
Yeah,
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, the stuff on Sean and on Hot Fuzz and the subsequent edition of the super special edition with guest commentaries and the World's End sort of fully formed first time out, I think. And Scott Pilgrim, what's going now, what happens with an Edgar Wright movie is this massive documentation and this celebration of itself right off the bat. And I mean, I honestly can't get enough of them. I find them absolutely fascinating and the work, the layering, the structural, the integrity of them. Yeah. These projects, they're never... The day he makes a movie that's just about its plot, I'll be shocked.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even disappointed.
Right. Because it's so... It constantly is like looking in on itself and kind of folding over, and like there are so many different ways in, right? Yeah. And it's like so... I've never like seen films that are that rewarding to a viewer and that rewarding to like a close reader. Because I love obsessing over movies, right? And like trying to notice everything in the background and every single like little detail that happens, and they make it pay off in the most beautiful ways. Yeah.
And not in a mechanical way. There is a mechanism in Hot Fuzz because it's an action movie and there's a level of escalation and those things have to happen in that order. And I suppose the structure of a zombie film dictates what happens in Sean from scene to scene, but you never feel like you're being handed the second part of a baton. Right. The dogs look up joke that runs through Shaun of the Dead, or the Winchester not having a real gun. Yeah. Like that pays off, but then it's also... It develops another level when they start arguing over what you call a shotgun shell. And it isn't enough. They're not satisfied with simply paying off the bit. Right. It's another step has to be made, or else I suspect they will. I mean, I've never really asked about this, and I'd love to know how long it took to come to those moments. Did they just decide that Ed is a know-it-all about things that don't matter, and so is that where it came from, or did it just evolve out of the characters? Or the prep, the amount of layering and preparation is just incomprehensible to me. These things arrive fully formed.
Yeah, and the fact that I think part of the reason why it doesn't feel like a joke setup payoff thing in like a cheesy way is because a lot of the payoffs aren't like spelled out entirely for the audience, right? Like they one of my favorite things that I just noticed this time I watched like Shaun of the Dead this morning. Was when in the first act, Ed, Nick Frost's character, is talking about snake hips, right? The guy who's like, he's like always surrounded by women and is like the kind of playboy. And then when they go through the backyards during the zombie part, you see a bunch of female zombies eating Snake Hip's body, and you see his boots, right? And like there's that, I never noticed that until this time, and I was like, oh my god, like there are so many layers to this.
And there's textual stuff, and then there's referential stuff that isn't just a passing reference, but the doppelgang moment when they run into the other group. Yeah. They're organized. Not only are they organized in rough approximation of each having the other, but they're also lined up in that, there's someone from the office as well, and in the place. Like, Davis is there, Martin Freeman is there. They're magnificently organized. The echoing is just, it's so playful and fun, and it's so serious in the moment that you don't have time to process it. Right. I mean, I noticed that I got the gag the first time, and then immediately went back. I think it must have been opening night that Kate hadn't seen it at the press screening. She was working a day job at the time, so I dragged that Friday night. I was like, no, we're going to see this now. Yeah. You just saw it. I know. You need to see it.
Yeah, and I have to see it again.
Yeah. And I'm laughing at different beats because knowing what's about to happen, I could actually look at the actors' faces. And it's just, it goes by so quickly. And this is what I love about Wright and Peg's writing. They don't care if you can keep up with them.
Oh, yeah. And they don't really care if you get the joke. Yeah. Like, they're excited about making the joke, it feels like, right?
And the moment still plays. Yeah. It can be funny later. Right now, we're in a movie about monsters.
Right.
And the same way Hot Fuzz just has this incredible bromance, for lack of a better term. It's a legitimate love story running through it that isn't really important,
right,
to the narrative unfolding. But the second time through, you just realize just how warm the film is, and how all of these giant action sequences are actually in service of the friendship plot that every other buddy movie pays lip service to, but doesn't really care about.
Yeah, whereas in this one, it's the friendship's like central to it. Like everything's constructed around, and I think that's another thing that I really respect about the three movies the three films is that it doesn't shy away from the genuine like emotional core of it, and it doesn't treat it for gags, right? It does, but it also is very true to it. I mean, there are jokes like in Shaun of the Dead when I think it's David who calls like Ed Sean's boyfriend.
Yes.
And then Sean's like, he's not my boyfriend, and then he gives him the beer, which is like a wonderful like quick joke. But there's still that like that heart, and that is their relationship really is the thing that kind of is the arc, is like the central core of the story. I think
that's why I think it's so weird and destabilizing in The World's End to see them hate each other.
Yeah.
To see them really play characters who don't want to be in the same space.
Yeah.
Or, well, one does because he has an agenda, and the other one just is so done with everything.
Right.
And we will get there.
Yeah.
And I'm really consciously trying not to just do an hour on Shaun of the Dead.
Sure. Yeah.
We both could.
Yes.
I can feel
it. Yeah.
But in terms of their flexibility, the Cornetto trilogy is conceptually very similar in that each film is about a thing it's not really about.
Yeah.
But they're wildly different narratives and wildly different scales.
Right.
And fascinatingly, ultimately, always dependent on that relationship, on what Simon Pegg and Nick Frost can do within their characters.
Right.
And Sean and Ed, I think, are pretty much them.
Yeah.
Right. You know, a little building on Spaced with
and very much their
Tim Bisley being sort of loose ends and not really sure what to do next. And then Hot Fuzz, the joke, of course, is that after Sean, that Peg's character is
he's like the greatest cop in London,
the super cop who cannot be tolerated by anyone around him.
Yeah,
but that's so great. Exactly. At first, you think they're the problem, that the Met doesn't want him around because they make him look bad, and then you realize he's actually kind of a dick.
Yeah, exactly.
At being great.
Yeah, but there's still like a theme that carries through all three of them about like selfishness, right? And about like the fact that like it's the individual versus like everyone else, and like man fighting his own, or like character fighting his own their own self,
sort of worst impulses.
Yeah, like this self-destructive kind of thing that goes through it. And there's like I think all three of them do this beautiful thing where it's like the personal stakes and the stakes of like the universe pile on at exactly the same time, and there's like it's that wonderful like collision,
the dramatic forge, right?
Yeah,
the thing that forces you to confront your own misgivings so you can save the world or completely fuck it up. When they came through for The World's End, Edgar was talking about it. Basically, it's a film in which a man gets an intervention from the universe.
Right. Yeah.
And you could say the same thing about Sean, in that his wake-up call is the end of the world.
Right.
And in Hot Fuzz, it's wonderful because you watch Nicholas Angel be completely right and utterly wrong about everything.
Yeah.
And that magnificent payoff, the super cop instincts that then just explode out into an actual action movie. And it's the twist from Unbreakable, you know, the movie you've been watching is actually the thing you thought it was. And we're going to just go for it.
Yeah.
But in such an exhilarating, deliriously fun way.
Yeah.
And shooting all of these elaborate action sequences in a tiny West Country hamlet.
Oh, yeah.
Pays off beautifully.
Such a beautiful juxtaposition, right? It's so fun.
And also lets you have Wicker Man moments.
Yes.
Like it brings in the other genre. It sort of it looms in there. In the that Peter Jackson-y way where the splatter is coming out of the eccentricity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that collision is so much fun to watch because it's the one film of the three that it doesn't feel like it knows what it's doing at first, which I thought was really great. It's incredibly slick even when it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And then gradually as the action structure reveals itself, of course it was supposed to look like that all along.
Right.
But that it's one of the few movies where the filmmakers are smart enough to put you in the same sense of dislocation as their protagonist without directly underlining it.
Oh, yeah.
It just comes around that way.
That's a really good point.
I mean, it took me 3 or 4 viewings. You know? Oh shit, that's why there's a lens flare. He's still in an action movie in his head.
Yeah.
He's making this happen. And then in the end, he really does.
Yeah, and it actually does happen that way. I also love the payoff when you find out, like, the reason that the council is killing everyone is actually just, like, the initial surface level reason, and it's not, like, the deep dive.
They built this elaborate mythology that means nothing.
Right.
It's just that they don't like hoodies.
Yeah, or her laugh is annoying or whatever. Oh my god.
Which is, you know, it brings it into the Stepford Wives thing. There's that line of the perfect little, the perfect village.
Yeah.
But at a cost.
Right.
And it's also, you know, like in the Brexit age, terrifyingly relevant.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I have English relatives. I've been at pubs and had conversations or heard conversations about how things that aren't like us are bad.
Right.
And it was there 10 years ago. It was right there and nobody saw it.
Right.
And look what happened.
Yeah, totally. And that's a theme throughout as well. All of them are about like individualism versus like a collective group of people that all want the same thing, right?
The greater good, if you will.
Right, exactly. For the greater good. I have to repeat that if you say it. Yeah.
If you didn't, I would have.
Yeah, exactly. And I just realized this watching them all this week, but like the progression of, I guess, antagonist from Sean to Hot Fuzz to World's End is also a progression of like awareness, right? Because it's zombies who are like they're like brain dead, right? Like there's no awareness, and then it's human, and then it's superhuman, or like post-human, or whatever you want to call it, right? And it's like the progression of like enemy that you have to face. And I always like wonder if there should be another trilogy or like even a fourth film, but I don't know how that would work because it feels like it's wrapped up.
You'd almost have to start again.
Yeah.
You'd have to find a new way in. And then you end up with the Matrix movies, and I don't know that that's necessary. You're right. The level and of course in between Hot Fuzz and The World's End, he made Scott Pilgrim, which is literally about leveling up.
Right. Yeah.
So it's clearly a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could. Where would you go? What would you do?
Yeah.
What's left?
And what other like genres are there to play with that? I don't know.
Well, body switching.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the inevitable. Go back in, right? Make it internal
that's
again.
a good point.
We did talk about that once. Just I think when The World's End came out, it came up just as the like, what is left? What could you do?
Yeah.
And I don't know. They don't rule out another collaboration.
Yes, that's
I think they'll never be far from each other.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And
I'm like Simon and Nick are working on something together, I think.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
They've all gone really quiet. The last thing I saw on social media from Peg was that he and his Star Trek co-writer are sitting down again, so I assume that means they're writing the next one.
Yeah.
Which is fine by me.
Yeah.
And whatever. That's the other thing that we can explore is the insane stardom that Simon Pegg has suddenly experienced. This whole his autobiography is called Nerd Do Well, but he really did. He's come out the other end and had that cult experience where people just want to work with you, and you say yes to everything, and so you turn around and you're in Star Trek and Mission Impossible, and suddenly bankable and doing these bizarre gargantuan enterprises, if you will, and coming back and finding out that your own stuff is just becoming more popular as a result.
Yeah.
So whatever they want to do, I'm so glad that they're in a position where they can do it.
Right. Yeah. Seeing Simon Pegg in the Star Trek movies and then the Mission Impossible movies was like, I can't describe like how excited I was by that, because it was just like, it felt like one of us being like recognized and like put in something that you wouldn't see someone like that in. Yeah,
no, when he turns up in Mission 3, it's subversive.
Oh yeah.
It's, what is this Englishman doing in this giant American movie? First of all, what are you doing here? And I love you and don't stop. And then he just rolls, and somehow he ends up fighting people in the next one. And it just the conception. I think it's his willingness to do whatever ultimately.
Yeah.
And the weird runner that they've built into the movies about him being a field agent, but to the point where, thanks to the role reversals in the fifth one, he plays a damsel in distress in the final act.
Right. Yeah.
He is like, as an actor, he is willing to go wherever he can.
Yeah.
And it's been 13 years now that I've been watching him and just popping up places, and I'm always happy.
Right.
I'm always happy to see him. Right. Frost is a little less successful in terms of scale, but he's done films, he's done television series. He had a really great, I guess it was a reality show, a travel show. I think it's called, the DVD's here somewhere, Danger 50,000 Volts. And
I have heard of it. Yeah.
It's delightful. He just runs around trying to kill himself for entertainment.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
And it all comes from this collaboration that feels, I assume, so genuine that it bonds with people. I mean, we recognize friendships in these movies.
Yeah.
And the friendship in Hot Fuzz, which is the classic buddy cop, they hate each other, they love each other.
Yeah.
But they've treated it legitimately.
Right.
Instead of they love each other being, they can tolerate each other and they keep insulting each other and they're racist towards each other, but it's cool because they're friends. Yeah. It's a legitimate love story.
Right. Yeah.
Between a man and a golden retriever. That clapping thing that Frost does
in the second one
as Danny Butterman is just, it's adorable and instantly recognizable as a big dog.
Yeah, or like as the orangutan impression from the first one.
The extension of it.
Yeah,
Clyde.
And I also love the like the little callbacks to Sean that are in Hot Fuzz, like the pub kind of thing, or there's that like one like throwaway that in the grocery store when they highlight like the employees of the grocery store and there's like the buzzer sound, and it's a callback to like the Sean, because they're all the zombies from the first movie.
There we go. There's a loyalty that runs through all three of these films, and I'm sure that that's simply the way they work. But the idea that they couldn't not do it.
Yeah.
There's a compulsion and a loyalty and a genuine affection. They're not, none of these films is cruel. I mean, what happens in Sean is genuine horror.
Yeah.
But the only person who truly suffers is David.
Right.
And he's an asshole.
Right.
So,
and he gets what he deserves.
Exactly. It's the failure to support the friendships that gets him killed.
Right.
And
yeah, it's a wonderful and he's the one, it's the movie isn't about like man versus man or human versus human, but he is the one character that tries to bring that cliche in, right? And then it's just you wipe him out.
Violently dispatched.
Exactly.
Yeah, because not even, Bill Nye's character, who is set up as the antagonist for Sean, because he chased him around the garden with a bit of wood.
Yeah.
Which for a turn of phrase that is so English. It's so specifically English.
Exactly. Yeah.
And is repeated a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Turns out to actually be
not a bad guy.
Not only not a bad guy, but a genuinely redemptive character, like a redeemable character.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that makes me very sad.
Right.
And then watching all of the things that proceed from that.
Yeah, his monologue in the car just before he dies legitimately gets to me. And it reminds me of it's the same effect as in World's End when the character who sees his bully again talks about how it wasn't that he bullied me all these years, it's that he didn't recognize me when I came back. And all those little moments of just pure humanity that are injected, and they function to me as jokes because they're totally subversive. You don't expect them to be in this type of movie, right?
Yeah.
Or initially you don't. If you know Edgar Wright and if you know their work, then you do, right? But the first time you watch it, you're just hit. You're blindsided because you don't expect that's gonna happen, and it's this wonderful. I'm always so fascinated by people who write comedy who know comedy, who do things that are comedy plus drama,
right?
Or who try to move just a little level beyond comedy or a lot level beyond comedy, because the way they insert those things, they are structured like jokes, right?
Yeah.
It's just that the payoff isn't laughs, it's emotion, or it's crying in some cases.
Yeah. Just the the way that the reversal lands on he's not my dad in Sean.
Yeah.
I mean, he was, but that isn't.
Right.
That hits on 3 different emotional levels. I mean, it acknowledges that we're in a zombie movie. It acknowledges the relationship that existed, and acknowledges that Sean knows that when you die, you're not you anymore. Which, of course, sets up the moment with his mother, which is just shattering.
Jeez, yeah.
In that it is a multi-layered scene as well.
Right.
It's a scene from Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
There's a line from Reservoir Dogs.
Right, and there's even the Mexican standoff. Yeah.
And it still tracks as emotional and real,
right.
and gives you that moment where where Barbara is still kind of, she's not willing to attack either Sean or Ed. She's confused, and then and David shows up and yells, and she hisses, and that sets it off, and it just watching that over and over again. I mean, over the course of a year, I guess, because I watched it obsessively. I went out. There was because of the release structure. It was available. It was released theatrically in the States and Canada a couple of months after it opened in the UK.
Okay. Yeah.
So the DVD was out before here.
Oh,
so
cool. Yeah.
I imported it. But before that, there was like a Hong Kong VCD.
Oh, man.
With subtitles burnt, and it's like, screw it, I'm buying that.
Yeah.
I'm watching that. And I've poured over this film because, I couldn't believe it existed. It felt like this thing that was made just for me.
Yeah. That's how it hit me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it burrows into you.
Yeah.
And you keep it.
Yeah.
And it rewards you for loving it because you go back and there is more. There's always more.
Yeah.
But watching it play, as then I tried to explain it to people and they would look at me like I was insane.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how can it work as a zombie movie and a romantic comedy? I don't know. I'll watch it again. Let's find out. Yeah. And then Hot Fuzz comes along, and it delivers on that potential. It's not just a one-off. I saw that with a crowd a couple of weeks before it opened at a 7 p.m. screening, a preview screening at the Varsity 8, a great big theater.
Yeah.
And people went nuts for it.
Yeah.
And they let themselves go. You could feel a moment about maybe 20 minutes in, after the first pub scene, where people get it, where the I guess it was when Jim Broadbent shows up. Once Angel comes back and finds out that Danny's a cop, people started to lose the kind of that apprehension.
Yeah,
I don't know what kind of movie this is,
right.
And they just stopped caring.
Yeah,
and it takes you along. If you give yourself over to these guys, they will not hurt you.
You are in safe hands. Yeah, they will carry you with soft hands. And it feels like that, right? Like you let yourself go to these movies, and you're just along for the ride, and it's like masterful, right? It's made by masters who know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're so goddamn young. Just true. Oh, it's just. I mean, I think Edgar's about 2 or 3 years younger than I am, but the idea that he made Shaun of the Dead when he was 30, and by extension, so did everybody else involved. Right, just these children making this phenomenally, the emotional intelligence of these movies is vastly superior to almost everything else.
Yeah,
and if you are that good and you don't lose it, that's incredible, because the temptation, Universal and Marvel reached out to Edgar to write Ant-Man after Sean. Yeah. And he could have been swallowed by that system. That's right. But he just kept pushing and doing their own thing. Yeah. And that whole story. Kate had never seen Ant-Man, so we just watched it again a couple of nights ago. I watched it again, and watching it, I think it was my 3rd time through it, I was just sort of looking, it's like, oh no, he wrote that.
Yeah. You can feel his fingerprints all over it, even though that relationship didn't work out. Yeah,
they rewrote the script. Well, Marvel gave it to Adam McKay and Paul Rudd, who apparently, McKay told me when he came through for The Big Short, we talked about it a little bit. Oh, cool. He just said that he and Rudd locked themselves in a hotel room for 4 weeks and came up with a script. Yeah. And most of it, he said the bones were the same. Yeah. And some of the dialogue survived, but for the most part, they had to, how do you say it? They had to accommodate a lot of the Marvel stuff. Okay. The original script was a standalone heist film. Yeah. With Scott Lang and the characters, and they had to add all the Marvel superstructure. Yeah. And I think
that's probably where it got tricky with Edgar, right? Edgar Wright.
It wouldn't have been his thing. Right. You can feel those scenes are written by someone else. Yeah. And maybe not even McKay and Rudd, maybe the Marvel people. Right. But the experience of watching that movie is that it fishtails from a really idiosyncratic goofy superhero film to a Marvel movie.
Right.
And then back again.
Yeah.
Back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah. And not in like the masterful way that like Sean goes back and forth between like rom-com and zombie.
Right.
Like it's just, it feels unbalanced and like off kilter.
Yeah. Oh, I wish.
I know. I so badly wish like in another universe we could see that Edgar Wright Ant-Man, because like that was my guess too, that it would be like his version of like the heist movie. As like the heist movie as like this genre that would be totally like studied and then taken apart and deconstructed and subverted and all the, and it like parts of it are there in the Ant-Man movie, but like I wish we could see like the,
I know, it's just
the purest version.
Never got to shoot it. We've had Patrick Wilson in it, I think, instead of
Paul Rudd.
Corey Stoll.
Okay.
The bad guy.
Yeah,
Wilson was, as far as I could tell, he was in it right up until Edgar left, and then he suddenly stopped tweeting about it.
Oh no.
And he's not in it.
Yeah.
So and I'm curious to see how that would have been handled. There's so much. Oh God, there's so many questions. Plus, there were so many drafts. Every time I interviewed him, he was doing it again.
Oh, really?
Because I would always ask him, like,
right,
how's Ant-Man going? We ever going to see it? Because it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, it will be." And we're doing another draft. We're doing this. We're doing that. And it was. I mean, we first talked about it in 2007.
Oh wow.
And then again in 2010.
Right.
When he came through for Scott Pilgrim twice that time.
Yeah.
He was shooting it here and there was just nothing. Like it was coming. It was always coming.
Yeah.
And then just went away.
Didn't work out. That's so sad.
Yeah. But with Hot Fuzz and The World's End too, you get to see what he can do with like a serious sci-fi concept.
Oh yeah.
And a big production.
Yeah.
Like the Hot Fuzz is his audition for Michael Bay.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like that storytelling where it just it incorporates and reinterprets just the, like, have you ever jumped through the air while going arg?
Yeah.
It's just,
or have you ever like jumped through the air firing one guy?
Yes, and the escalation, that naive enthusiasm that Danny has is so sweet and weird.
Oh yeah.
And then of course the movie turns into Point Break and Bad Boys 2 and
quite literally, because there is the Point Break scene.
Images
is there a Michael Bay 360 shot?
Yes. When shit gets real.
Yes, that's right. In the center of the town, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and of course you can see how close everything is because they're not in a big space. And then even that pays off with the miniature village.
I was gonna mention that. Yeah, the metaphor is literally these two guys fighting over the village. Mm-hmm. And it's the way that's filmed is so brilliant too. Like maybe an Edgar Wright like Godzilla type movie, like a monster movie, would be cool.
I would watch that.
I would totally watch that. I would watch anything. I'm so excited for Baby Driver too.
Me too. There was a screening last week and it murders me in my heart that I didn't know about it.
Oh no.
Yeah. Someone tweeted it out at like 6:35 on a Wednesday and then went silent. It turned out that there was a screening, word of mouth screening that Sony had and just didn't tell anybody about. And
oh wow.
I'm just like, it played in my city? I feel like I'm Batman now. How did this happen?
Yeah, exactly.
In my city.
Yeah.
But, by the time this comes out, we will have seen it, I hope. Mm-hmm. But it's just, it's eating me alive right now.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't watch trailers. I avoid all press. I've seen the poster, and that's the extent of it. And
yeah,
I trust Edgar to make a trailer that doesn't give away his movie, but at the same time, I don't want to see it. I don't want the images in my head.
Yeah, I made the mistake of seeing the trailer, and it just made me super excited for it. But I don't want to know, and I'm sure that it doesn't give away anything.
Yeah,
at the same time, right?
He wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
he wouldn't do us like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's another point where like I think I saw World's End with my brother the first time, and he had no idea what it was about, and he knew it was like from the Shaun of the Dead guys and from the Hot Fuzz guys, and like I used to watch those movies at home all the time, and so like I would just play. Even today, this morning, I'm staying at my parents' house, and I was just playing Shaun of the Dead to like catch up and refresh myself. And
so you're sort of getting peripheral exposure.
Yeah, yeah, and he started getting that, and also like this morning, my parents and my brother all like came and sat on the couch with me and watched it just out of habit, because they all know that movie, and they all know all three of those movies so well now because I always watch them. But he didn't know what World's End was about, and when that reveal happened in the bathroom, he like lost his mind because World's End doesn't set itself up the way Sean does.
Right.
Like there's a difference where Sean like you go into it knowing it's a zombie movie, and like the little hints in the background just play. That's like the game, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, when is it going to reveal itself?
Well, and that's what's so creepy about it. It is legitimately giving you zombie moments, and so if the comedy is coming, you better get there fast because everybody's going to die.
Right.
And that's exactly the point, that life is precious, and that it's this incredible subtle way of getting you there. The same way that Hot Fuzz does it with camera work and cutting. Yeah. And then with The World's End, there's none of that.
Yeah. And it just hits, and when it happens, right?
Yeah.
And my brother, like, I remember him being like, what the fuck is going on? And it was like the most delightful thing to like experience through him by just like sitting next to him and hearing him like have that moment. Oh my god.
Did he finish? Did he stay with it?
He was totally on board.
Oh, good.
But it was just like he had no idea. Yeah. And I wish I knew nothing about World's End in the same way.
I knew the premise. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a still early on of Steve Oram with the glow mouth. And other than that, I avoided. I did everything I could not to know. But I did know, I think he described it as with an AI at one point, which is just such a goddamn perfect turn of phrase. He can do it without thinking. I know he can, too. He can just do that, burp things out like that. Uh-huh. But then when I saw it, I couldn't believe the confidence of the mundane stuff, that it just does take 40 minutes to unveil itself. And again, it's what he does. He establishes all the stakes, he establishes the relationships, sets everything up, and then sets the ball, bowls a giant monster bowling ball right into whatever is set up. But the absolute lack of clues or hints, there isn't even like a little theremin noise. You expect that this is how you set these things up. But the pivot into science fiction is so abrupt that it really, that and the way that the cinematography changes, because that first action sequence is strange fluid lockdown camera thing that was immediately ripped off for Kingsman.
I was just gonna say that. That bar fight in the bar fight in World's End is that is the Kingsman style. And when Kingsman came out, everybody was like, "Oh, that's so fantastic!" It's like, God damn it! Yeah, I know.
You didn't see that's what that means. You didn't see The World's End. Go see The World's End. This is your homework. And Kingsman is fun, but come on,
exactly.
2 years ago, and it was better. And that incredible choreography, and it was the Scott Pilgrim team coming back to do these fights that were completely different from Scott Pilgrim, because with Scott Pilgrim, he shot only what he needed. Take for take, shot for shot. So there's a moment where, if there's a moment where Michael Cera jumps towards the camera, that's all they shot. And then they reset for something else. And he told me during the Scott Pilgrim tour, this one just made my head fall off. They reset every time for every shot, because if there was a reverse angle, it couldn't be the same reverse angle as the previous take, because his conception of it was that everything had to look like it was being drawn by hand. And if you're drawing a new frame by hand, it wouldn't look exactly the same.
Oh, wow.
So even if it's just a matter of a slightly different light or a slightly different camera position, every shot had to be retaken. And
that's in my mind,
that's so complicated. And to do that, just to decide that's how you're going to do it, that's horrible. That's so much more work.
Right.
But it pays off because it feels your brain is registering something slightly different every time. And in The World's End, he shoots the action sequences in long takes, which is completely different and a totally different challenge for the stunt team, especially once you start adding the thing about, well, they're really kind of hollow and filled with goo. And so there's that one incredible moment where someone picks one of them up and wields them like a weapon. It hits somebody with another, hits a blank with another blank. And you realize that their centers of gravity are different, that all of this stuff is there. And just in the moment, I don't know what's happening. That first fight where things don't, physics don't work.
They don't look right. And then you realize that, and there is this amazing feeling that that they're lighter. You get that sense from just the way everything's choreographed and shot.
No, it's incredible. And then it is also paying off emotional relationships in scene after scene, where people, who's being rescued and what's happening and who's in trouble, they're all meaningful. Plus you get the whole bar
name
the
and
pub
the
names, setting up what happens.
Right.
It's just, again, it's that obsessive layering, that need to do it all.
Yeah.
Every film they make feels like their last shot. Like they may never get to do this again, so they're pouring everything they can into
that
it.
really does. Yeah. That really does feel that way. Oh my god.
And emotionally, of course, in The World's End, it is the last shot. Like they're not only are they're not destroying the Cornetto verse, but the stakes of, I don't think, were ever higher.
Oh right.
And you also get that really awful undercurrent that maybe Gary doesn't want to live. That he's racing towards his own end.
Yeah.
His own obliteration.
Right.
And that's something that I didn't know Peg could do.
Oh yeah.
As an actor, I have to say.
He's so versatile.
Yeah.
And the setup when they're all in that shed and they're like proving to each other they have the scars and stuff.
Which of course is the thing, which is so great that they stopped this movie dead for an homage, but at the same time the stakes are incredibly high, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter that it's a thing homage. That's for your second viewing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that it's another one of those things where like the personal stakes and like the world stakes come together in like this amazing way where like everything means at least three different things, right? Like that. There's and the other thing that like there's a stylistic, like a comedy style. I think this is like a very British tradition, but it's just like the wordplay and the puns and like the double speak and the double meanings. That there's just something so delightful about just like analyzing those jokes, right? In the same way that you analyze like all the frames of the movie and all the details and stuff. Where even though like the words and the wordplay is so like tight and structured and concise that like makes my like comedy and like pun brain really
fizzes,
happy.
Right? You know, it's that thing that says that they couldn't help themselves, but they know no other way.
Right.
Like you could do a stripped down version, even in Hot Fuzz, where like that last reel is just joke after bit after joke after bit, paying off all the specific complaints and all of those tics.
Yeah.
And then you could do a simpler version of it, but that's the point, that there are simpler versions of it and they're not as much fun.
Right.
Like, this is how you enjoy these things.
Yeah.
And with The World's End, there is that creeping sorrow. There's a real sadness. The sense that even in the like that Jackie Chan moment where Gary is fighting him with a pint in his hand, that pint will obliterate him. He doesn't.
Oh yeah.
We shouldn't be rooting for that.
Right.
But it's so delightful.
It is. Yeah. And that's like that drunk. There's a whole drunken master like.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I grew up watching like Jackie Chan movies too. So when I saw that scene the first time, I was like, "Holy shit!
Yeah.
This is like the coolest thing ever." Yeah. This is Drunken Master set in like a science fiction like robot alien apocalypse. Exactly. In a bar in like a town,
in a tiny town.
Yeah.
It's the thing where if you step back for a second. Why do that? It's so complicated. One more thing, Jesus Christ! But it's there to be discovered later.
Yeah,
like, that's what's so wonderful about it. And then of course the underlying metaphor too of the 12 pints and the obliteration and the end of Gary King, who instead ends everything else by being a dick.
Yeah,
like, it's really wonderful because the argument. I don't think the argument holds up. I don't think that the film is, and we talked about this at the time, and I get that Gary is happy, but he's destroyed literally everything.
Oh yeah.
People are gonna. It's a Mad Max wasteland out there. People are gonna die from diseases.
Yeah.
And yes, you can make your own farm, but you don't get to have cornettos anymore. Right. It's a really mixed bag for everybody else.
Yeah, and then he goes off and like decides to kill everyone who hates the blanks.
Yeah, hang out with his robot doubles and literally live in his
weird fantasy
past. Yeah.
Which he actually didn't learn anything, and he destroyed the world by doing it.
Yeah, no, he gets what he wants, and it's awful.
Right.
But it's wonderful that you can still go out on a high. And that was the thing that I just watching it the second time, because again. Saw it, went back.
Yeah.
Watching it the second time and realizing that, this not only was I conflicted about the ending, this is not a happy ending.
Right.
Like, this is an actively unhappy ending, no matter how happy the music is.
Right.
Because we're in his head now.
Yeah.
It's, it's the end of, what is it? It's not St. Elsewhere. That's the easy one. Oh, it's Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. It's the end of Brazil.
Yeah.
Which is also about rebelling against a massive controlling authoritarian organization.
Yeah, exactly.
But instead of the pullout to Jonathan Pryce sitting there coming to himself, we never get the pullout.
Yeah.
So it happened.
Yeah.
Because we're being told it from another person's perspective.
That's right.
And it's deeply unsatisfying.
Right.
And poignant and sad and weird.
Right. Yeah. It's in the first two, like the self-destructive tendencies kind of like the characters learn. Like Simon Pegg's characters somehow grow or change or learn, and in this one he doesn't. Right.
Yeah.
Like, he just gets totally validated and everything, and like his like self-destructive fantasy is fulfilled.
Yeah. And his friends are
either dead
or left behind,
right?
Because he's not associating with them.
Yeah.
He's a mythical figure now, and I think it's because they don't want to see him.
Yeah,
because they were right all along.
Right,
Exactly. It's a really strange way to end the Cornetto trilogy, and I thought about it for a while afterwards. Am I supposed to reinterpret Sean and Hot Fuzz through this lens now? And I refuse to.
Right.
I basically just thought, after a couple of minutes, no.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they're great. Shut up.
Yeah.
They're perfect.
Yeah.
Stop telling me things, brain. I refuse to accept this. But it is such it's a double pivot, because you've had so much fun watching this resistance, and then confronted the fact that your hero isn't a particularly good hero, and then you're left with that emptiness.
Yeah.
Where the legend of Gary King will continue, but look what he had to do to build that legend.
Right.
It's not a good legend.
Right.
And Edgar and Simon and Nick all have said over recently in interviews, not recently, but subsequently to the film's release, they said that it's a bar story.
Oh,
that it is,
interesting.
like it's the thing that you tell someone. It's the Legend of Gary King is something you tell someone over a pint. And the whole point of the movie is that there are no more pints to be had. That like everything's gone.
Yeah.
So in order to be celebrated, he had to basically be the only hero left.
Right.
And that's equally sad.
Right.
Like, it's fascinating because dramatically that's amazing.
Yeah.
But that's a bummer.
Oh, yeah.
For this storyline.
Yeah. I also like that the structure of that movie is it starts with Simon Pegg's character, like Gary King, telling the story, and then it ends with Nick Frost's character telling the story.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, also a nice way to wrap up the trilogy. Having like the two guys have their own stories, like bookending the movie.
Oh yeah. No, I think that's very deliberate. And I was wondering when I first saw it, like, have I failed the movie by just not quite liking this?
Yeah. Well, I still haven't really figured out a way to for it to settle with me. I remember feeling that way, and then I watched it again on the plane on the way here, and I was like, this still feels unsettling in a strange way.
And I think we're supposed to be conflicted, but again, because they're so good at packaging that subtext and that underlying arc, I don't think it hits you the way it's maybe a less adept filmmaker would land it.
Right.
Which is good, and also strangely, like, it's the one where I don't feel full when it's over.
Right.
I don't have that same bubble of satisfaction, and I want to think about it because I'm pretty sure I missed something. And I've watched it enough times now that I'm pretty sure I haven't.
Right.
And that's how it's supposed to play.
Right. Well, I mean, the first two are really about how close those friendships and relationships are, right? And then this last one is really I think the message is everyone has moved on, and everyone what you had when you were childhood friends doesn't actually exist. And to me, that maybe is the final message of the movie. Where and even in the epilogue or in the coda or whatever, everyone goes their own way, right?
Yeah.
They aren't friends, the five of them. They each are doing their own thing, and maybe that's I feel like World's End resonates with me the most now because it's that weird feeling of going back home and not really feeling like it's your home anymore. And, I think that's what that unsettling feeling is, that we're talking about. The weird, kind of it feels off to us because in real life it also feels off, right?
Yeah.
But it's that weird truth that they've tapped into that gets to you.
Yeah, and they're delivering the third Cornetto movie on their own terms, which is saying that, you can't actually get this again.
Yeah.
The feeling is going to be different every time, and we're older and slower, and this is
that's right.
where it has to be. Trainspotting 2 does a really great job of that same
I
thing.
haven't seen it yet.
Simply refuses to make a Trainspotting sequel that is Trainspotting, because they're all 45 and you can't do that.
Right.
And they even acknowledge it right off the bat, visually and narratively, and Danny Boyle is still just as much of a genius visually and in terms of momentum.
Yeah.
But it's all about these people confronting the fact that, as in The World's End, you are the person you were going to, like, you finally you're done. You've grown up. You are who you are.
Right.
And this is who you're going to be until it's over.
Right.
And you have to stop being aspirational.
Right.
And like Gary constantly promising he's going to turn his life around.
Yeah.
He's not interested in that.
No. Yeah.
And the supporting characters too. I mean, I completely, I haven't even mentioned the actors' names, like Eddie Marsan and Paddy Considine and Rosamund Pike and Martin Freeman, and they're all done with him.
Yeah.
All those characters are at varying degrees of frustrated and angry and done.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
We are told over 2 hours that they're
it.
right.
They're right.
They're pretty much right.
So, I guess to them, it is a happy ending because they never have to see him again.
It's true.
Like, maybe they all get what they want.
This is the price.
Yeah. Like Paddy Considine and Rosamund Pike end up together.
Yeah, they have a little farm.
Yeah, and so they get their happy ending. Yeah. That's like it's a sad, strange, like, subversion of, like, the kind of, like, friendship is, like, the heart of, like, the first two, right?
Yes. It's the Simpsons line about alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
Right.
Yeah, because getting the band back together is disastrous.
Mm-hmm.
It results in, I mean, most of those people were dead before they got there.
Yeah.
But now we know.
Yeah.
Which is worse. And the temptation of the blanks is something too that I think maybe resonates with artists who have been trying to make their own way in a pretty homogenous industry.
Right.
And certainly, Simon Pegg made 3 or 4 romantic comedies between Sean and Hot Fuzz that weren't great.
Like Run, Fat Boy Run.
Yeah. Well, he wrote some of that one, and you can sort of tell which scenes he punched up.
Yeah.
Or I was thinking of How to Alienate Friends,
right.
How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, which is just terrible. Right. It really is. And he's not even fun in it. You can see him working, trying to figure out how to do something.
Yeah.
And it just, the movie won't let him. It's just really quite inept.
Yeah.
And it's not his fault.
Yeah.
And now he seems to, like, post The World's End, he's found stuff like Man Up, where it's playing, he's much more comfortable playing to his strengths, or at least now he has the power to say, and probably Mission and Star Trek have more to do with that than these, but, like, I know what I'm doing, let me do this thing.
Yeah, let me do my thing.
And, and World's End is, it's almost like he's saying goodbye to that part of his career where he could be completely at the service of something and do, like, and I don't, well, that doesn't sound right either, because I think, if he does make another film with Edgar and Frost.
That was my next question. Do you think they are gonna, like, do you think that message of, like, oh, like, you can't go back to the past, we're all separate people now and different, is that something that, like, is specific about the 3 of their relationships as well to each other?
I hope not.
I hope not either.
I mean, I know that, Simon and Nick made Paul.
Yeah.
And if they're working on something now, then that's even more encouraging.
Yeah.
I think that if they do make another film, it would have to be different. It would. I don't think it'll be a genre pastiche in the same way, maybe. I think it might just be a film about people in their 40s. It might just be a movie. Instead of an experiment.
Right. Well, it'd be wonderful to, like, kind of see how that sensibility unfolds in something that's not like a genre piece.
Yeah.
Right?
Because what do you do? Like, if you don't have that net, if you don't have the security of, well, this is really about werewolves.
Right.
If you have to actually just sit at a take
and just
have an emotional moment.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
I would be really curious to see if, having not seen Baby Driver, but I expect it's got a similar kind of energy.
I think so.
That's certainly what people have been saying in sort of in my periphery when I'm trying, just before I clap my hands over my ears and start yelling at them.
Yeah.
But it's not, people aren't talking about it like a chamber piece.
Right. Sure.
And I want Edgar to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Like, literally.
Right.
Whatever he wants.
Right.
But I also would love to see what 45 or 50-year-old Edgar is interested in doing.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you can't... I mean, you can be a kid forever.
Right.
You can continue to work in your chosen field.
Yeah.
And I don't doubt that he will turn out great stuff. But The World's End tells me there's more.
Right.
And that that they've both been thinking about this.
Right. And there's like an angst maybe about it or something. Yeah.
And where does that go? What does it mean? How does it manifest in this incredibly successful career?
Right.
I mean, I'm kind of hoping that whatever the next collaboration is, that it's informed by not just their friendship but their real lives.
Yeah.
That we get to that they get to explore some of that, because I don't know that they've done that yet. I don't know that, other than the most basic aspects of Tim Bisley in Spaced, where he's someone who's deeply versed in pop culture, but he's also a little bit lost. Mm-hmm. But that's who you were.
Yeah.
Now you can't be that person anymore. You have to be someone else.
Right.
You have to be who you are.
Right. And they've found so much success doing what they do that, I wonder what that next...
Yeah, is the impulse to keep doing that and try to capture that. Although I suppose the other thing too is the films have never been that financially successful. Well, they've done well, but they're not massive, so they're not a straitjacket. You don't need to make Transformers 5 after Transformers 4.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
They're always like definitely passion projects, right?
Yeah.
That's really nice.
They made them because they needed to.
Right. Yeah. Out of some like internal desire that was eating them out, right?
Yeah.
So,
which actually leads nicely into the wrap question, which is always the same on the podcast, which is there anything of the trilogy that you have borrowed or lifted or referenced or absorbed into your own creative DNA?
Sure. Definitely I think, so much. I think this could be the whole podcast.
That's fine.
I mean, like, very, like, the most basic answer, or, like, the most, I guess, surface level answer to that is, in high school, I wrote a play about zombies that was, that was definitely based on Shaun of the Dead and Martin McDonagh movies and plays, like In Bruges and The Pillow Man, and, like, his kind of...
sort of verbose.
Yeah, very verbose, like Irish Tarantino-esque, but that does him a disservice, right? To describe it like that.
But it's the flavor, I get it.
Yeah, or like Mamet kind of esque. But I wrote a play that was kind of exactly all those things combined, and that eventually turned into a play that was staged at the Factory in October, called Dead End. So that was that's the initial response. But I mean, honestly, the idea that Shaun of the Dead taught me, both in watching it and seeing how like reviewers talked about it, because I was also really into like Rotten Tomatoes and all, and I know you're not supposed to read all those things, but like it taught me that like comedy could reach a level of art,
right, in
a way, and it didn't have to be like the lower end of like the creative spectrum. Like it could be, like, comedy can be high art. And this trilogy really affirmed that for me, and so I've always been interested in finding humor and also finding pathos and like genuine emotion, and human like connection, and there are so many things like that like to me kind of read as in line with or like descendants of the Cornetto trilogy.
Okay.
So I'm trying to like. Honestly, like Atlanta, the TV show, Donald Glover's show, feels in many ways like very similar, because it's this weird, like, very genuine but very surreal and very like strange.
Yeah. It is. It's
thing.
Just stylized enough. Right,
yeah.
To set itself apart without tipping over completely into artifice.
Right. And Get Out, I think, is the other one that I watched recently. Jordan Peele's movie that. Again, it's like a comedian working with the genre, right? Yeah. And so there's so many different like similarities, I think, that I've like kind of tracked along that. But yeah, I think it also taught me that like it basically taught me that comedy is not like the lower form of art, that you can use that for really, really nice like human pieces, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing in just in the Twitter account, there's a thing in that sort of wriggles around in there, this yearning and a melancholy that you know, really shouldn't be able to pack into 140 characters. And I'm incredibly, I'm impressed and envious of the ability to do that, because to turn on a dime, to, you know, to set up and pay off in that tiny space. I'm pretty good for insults, but that's about it.
Right. Well, I mean, those are kind of like studies on, like, I think Twitter's so amazing because you really have to pack that setup really tightly.
Yeah.
And the payoff and like the setup is almost like a genre thing, right? And you like, there's so many. I love to play with joke formats and like take the format and set it up much in the way I get it's obviously an insult to them to like compare it to that, but
no,
like in the way,
but it's the same instinct,
right?
Like, it's the same impulse, which is so fascinating.
Yeah, it's like the impulse to take like the zombie movie and then find like the comedy and pathos in that, or to take like the joke format and like subvert that and find like the real like heart in that. And like we were talking about, especially the first two, but also the third, there's not a shyness to finding that real human emotion, being honest and celebrating that, as opposed to like kind of scoffing at it or making fun of it or paying lip service to it. And that's like, I think almost more than anything, that's what keeps me coming back to them too, because there is such a, it's not just like this group of like smart guys showing off how smart they are, right? There's also like this very huge heart in each of them.
Yeah. The most basic way, I was trying to figure out a way to set it up in the intro even. Yeah. And just all three of them have Simon Pegg being very lost. And in the end, he finds his way out. Yeah. But it's never as simple, and it could be you can be very reductive and say, oh, guy grows up during a zombie apocalypse, or cop learns to be a better cop by being a worse cop, or Trainwreck gets intervention from the universe. And you can say that, but it doesn't capture any of it. Right. It's the flavor, it's the intelligence, it's the sense that there's a hand on the gear shift that is going to move spastically and unexpectedly, that you're going to be thrust forward. Yeah. It's like driving in a car with somebody, and this is the setup to Baby Driver. But, exactly. You know, when I first learned to drive stick, I was in my 30s, and it's counterintuitive to literally every instinct you have. Really? Because you don't even use the brake sometimes. You can shift and move the car without having your foot on the brake. Okay. And it feels like at any moment you're going to kill somebody, because you'll either put it into third or shoot forward or bunny hop across an intersection. Yeah. And the metaphor in my head is that last shot in Hot Fuzz where you just slam the gear shift down and take off. Yeah. And it is thrilling. Right. And your whole body is vibrating because you don't have to steer. Right. He's got this. Yeah. Like, it's going to be good. Right. And yeah, if Baby Driver is really just Edgar Wright in the driver's seat while I'm next to him going, okay, now what?
Exactly. Yeah, take me places.
I'm there. Right. I'm so there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so good to be able to relax into it and to know it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, there's also like, there's also one like thing that the man gets intervention from universe kind of description also doesn't fit, because while the characters do grow, there also is a sense that they don't, right? Yeah. Like there's that sad, very like bittersweet feeling where like they kind of learned, but also like at the end of Shaun of the Dead, he's still basically the same person, right? And so they kind of go through all this stuff, and there's like, they learn a bit, but they also don't change. And maybe that leads into Baby Driver as well, where like there's that, like Edgar Wright has this, it's like this, it feels like this like stubborn confidence, and I'm sure as a filmmaker he has to be very like stubborn and attached to his vision to do all this stuff, right? And it's just exciting when that pays off in such a nice way, where like everything he's doing he knows is like the right thing to do, and you're just along for the ride, and you're just like, take me to all these places. Yeah. Oh, okay, well, just watch him again right now. Exactly.
Cool. My thanks to Jonny's son, whose new book, Everyone's a Alienman When You're an Alienman Too, comes out next Tuesday, June 27th, wherever you buy your books. I pre-ordered my copy in Toronto at the Beguiling, if that helps. You can find Jonny on Twitter at JonnySon, all one word, and you can keep track of his book tour at jomnyson.com. That's Jomny with an M. He'll be all over the place in the next couple of months, stopping at the Strand in New York, June 27th, at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society in Cambridge, Massachusetts on June 28th, at the Book Warehouse in Vancouver on July 4th, and at the Toronto Reference Library on July 11th, in conversation with Ann T. Donahue, who was the very first friend of this show. So that's lovely. You can find Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End on Blu-ray and DVD from Universal Studios Home Entertainment. They're also available on iTunes and Google Play, but, the Blu-rays have all the extras, and the extras are amazing. Oh, and keep an eye out for Baby Driver when it opens Wednesday, June 28th. I have seen it, and it's spectacular. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, that would be very kind of you. Dexter would like you to know that dogs can look up. It's a fact. Thanks for listening.